Shout out to Nintendo Prime and his latest video on Dungeon Talk and how the dungeons could potentially work and operate in Tears of the Kingdom. My previous two videos, I was more in line thinking they could be shrines. The Sky Islands could be shrine replacements in some of the caves and whatnot on the overworld as well. We get a mix of both. But there is a completely different aesthetic that we also saw in the latest trailer compared to the sky stuff, the overworld stuff, and these caves as well. One with a luminous stone talus and one with what looks like a classic Zelda enemy, a like, with Link battling the enemies with new weapons, the flamethrower, dragon thingy, and some kind of Zonai cannon. So those kind of caves seem like they're not as deep underground potentially, and they're you know, all over the scattered all over the overworld, where they're sort of enemy focused caves. You go in there, maybe you get a treasure after each one. But this image is the most intriguing aesthetic. It's a fourth aesthetic, you know, that they have in the game. Maybe there's a fifth one, underwater. Maybe there's a sixth one. The towers, there's actually these tower-like structures in the sky. What's the interior of those going to be like? So, what is this? Is this a deeper underground than the other caves? Is it sort of, or is this Tears of the Kingdom's version of a sort of underground dungeon, kind of like it's an actual dungeon? This is the iteration of the Forest Temple, the Shadow Temple, or the Forbidden Woods from Wind Waker. This, because it's very extensive, it's very vast. You can see how far back you can travel to. All completely different aesthetic. Different plant life, different enemy encampment, malice-infested enemies, Lizalfos. The grass is kind of like a lavender or a purplish hue to it. There's spirits floating around, there's pools of malice, different plant life, different trees, and it's very intriguing, very creepy looking. A completely different aesthetic than the caves, than the Sky Islands, in the actual overworld of the game. So we're up to 4 aesthetics right now. What really is this? Well, the question is this, can we access this kind of underground through like a pool of malice on the overworld, which we've seen, those are everywhere. However we get down into this area, the question is there other areas outside of this one area and other continents that are similar to this, or is it going to have a lot of variation, which fans seem to want, myself included, like from, say, Ocarina of Time with the Forest Temple, a Shadow Temple, a Spirit Temple, Water Temple. For example, if we go under the ground into Gerudo in the desert, it can't look like this. The underground of Gerudo, if you can go into like sand dunes and things, there's no way it's going to look like this. You see what I'm saying? Maybe this is the underground of the Faron region or something, and maybe the different regions, the aesthetics will change, and this won't be throughout. This aesthetic we get here won't be throughout the whole game. That's the question. That's the big question. Is this a dungeon, an underground kind of underrealm or a dungeon type thing? And are the Sky Islands more like the shrine replacements? Or are the Sky Islands, in fact, dungeons, but maybe more miniature style dungeons, more sort of in between the shrines and, say, the dungeons in Twilight Princess, in terms of completion and times it takes to complete them? Maybe that's kind of more in line with what they're doing with it, right? When you look at something like this, we have a cluster of Sky Islands and all different platforms. And how vast is this section that he's on right now? We see him rotating his structures and using his abilities. And is, say, this the final boss battle to that actual sort of puzzle that we just saw here? This puzzle, and is this like the same island? And then we fight these bosses at the end. And it's kind of like a in-between version of a shrine and a dungeon, say, from Twilight Princess, in terms of how long it would take to complete and whatnot. And some of these, so they're puzzle-based. How many of these are out there? So is it this kind of, I think it's going to be a great variation now, where we get, like, in terms of the magnitude of the challenge, we're going to get 3 layers to that, where we're going to get the Sky Island kind of puzzle-based and combat-based new semi-shrine dungeons, where they're right in between. We're going to get the caves that are all over the overworld, which are more like shrine based in terms of they're just, you go in there, maybe you fight one enemy, defeat the enemy, get a treasure type thing. And we're going to get something even completely different with what we're seeing right here. So there's 4 different aesthetics going on that I think need to be really focused on when it comes to the game. This one, the caves, the sky, and the overworld. There may even be a 5th, again, underwater. I think there's another one as well when it comes to the Torii gates that are on the various islands as well, which I'll go over in my next video. So that's kind of, I wanted to clear up my last 2 videos where the Sky Islands, maybe they are Tears of the Kingdom's version of shrines, dungeons, whatever, but I think what they're really going to be is something right in between that. And then we have to really decipher, is this some new kind of dungeon or realm that will also serve as a more serious sort of mission, going down and exploring and defeating enemies and doing what you're going to do down here, because this is an aesthetic we've never seen before.